Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the President and CEO of GMDC, Patrick Spear.
Good morning, and soon to be good afternoon, everyone. Hope you all had a great morning. And welcome to those of you just joining us for the second session of our conference, CCC meetings that start this afternoon. Welcome to Colorado, to our home state, which we are proud to call the headquarter location for GMDC for almost 50 years. For those of you that are concluding your market on-ramp sessions with lunch today, I hope you found your sessions productive, and I would make sure to ask all of you to follow up as requested and as appropriate with your potential trading partners. I hope you all had a great session. We've got a great session for you today at lunch, and I've got a couple of housekeeping things I want to take care of first before I introduce our speakers. For those of you that were with us last night, you saw the backpack build we did for the Kids in Need Foundation. And I want to just give a quick top line and summarize the work we did this year with Kids in Need. I know I spoke yesterday to the culture we have of trying to create a benefit and support in the communities that host us and welcome us in when we do conferences like this. Over the last couple of years, we've worked with Feeding Children Everywhere, but this year, thanks to the leadership of Jerry Reinhardt at Dollar General, Peter Fahrenkopf with SureTech, Rick Radovich, and his colleagues at BIC, we were introduced to David Smith and the team at the Kids in Need Foundation. And last night, actually over the course of the last few weeks, we raised over $8,000, and last night we built over 300 backpacks that will be donated to Kids in Need. And I want to specifically thank George Fiscus, Michelle King, and the F&M Merchant Group for their support of the backpack build last night, and also our friends at BIC. Can we please give them a hand? Really appreciate your leadership, George. Thank you so much for making this happen. I'd like to introduce the recipient of the backpacks we built last night, and I'm going to ask Tawny Vesey from the Gold Crown Association to join me on stage. I've got a backpack we're going to present, and she's going to tell us a little bit about where these backpacks are going to be used. Welcome, Tawny.
Thank you.
Let's do this.
Thank you so much. Good morning-ish, yeah. Okay, good morning. So the Gold Crown Foundation started in 1986, actually as a girls' basketball camp, because our two co-founders, Ray Baker and Bill Hanslick, they had daughters, and girls' basketball camps weren't offered at the time. And so they wanted to start basketball camp, and then it just kind of snowballed from there over the last 33 years. We now currently serve about 18,000 kids in the Denver metro area through basketball, volleyball, golf, and enrichment programming. And the backpacks are specifically going to impact our kids in our enrichment program, which is a free drop-in program after school for kids in low-income areas. So for a lot of these kids, a backpack full of school supplies is not something that happens every year. So thank you so much for your generosity and your time, because I know it probably took some time to put these together. You guys are going to make 300 kids really happy when they go back to school, which some kids maybe aren't happy when they go back to school. So this should certainly help for some of these kids in these lower income areas. So thank you again.
Thanks again, Tawny, and thanks again to F&M Merchant Group, BIC, and our friends at the Kids in Need Foundation. It's really a great cause, and we're really excited to make a difference in the Denver community. I want to touch on, I talked about this yesterday, our foyer partners, our members and supporters that are working out in the pre-function space out in the foyer area. And I would ask you to make sure you stop by and see them, because there's some great insights, there's some great opportunities for you this Father's Day weekend. You may want to stop by and see the Nielsen team and really dig in on our Nielsen GM hierarchy to understand the trends around GM categories at retail. Nielsen has incredible data and really useful dashboards that you can all use every day in your business. And this is data that's available to you as a GMDC member year-round. So if you have not dug in on the GM hierarchy, please stop by and see our friends at Nielsen. They are located right across from the help desk on the east side of the CCC floor. So stop by there. I also want to recognize our service solution providers and partners that are working out in the foyer. By all means, if you've got some time in your schedule, stop by and learn what's going on with the 313 sales group. Our friends at Hallmark and American Greetings are both making greeting cards available to you to send back to loved ones this Father's Day weekend. So by all means, stop by, pick out a card, and send it to somebody you care about, and let them know you've been out in Colorado. SodaStream is kind enough to set up their innovation around beverages. So if you haven't used SodaStream before or tried out some of their products, they'll be out in the foyer as well. Also, for those of you on the supplier side that are doing business in Northwest Arkansas or want to learn how to optimize your presence on Walmart or SamsClub.com, our friends at Wabata are doing some really great and provocative things around how do you scale and how do you optimize around your e-com opportunities. So stop by and see the team at Wabata. They'll be out there as well. I am going to mention now, too, our friends at Kodak Moments. For those of you that haven't seen the kiosk over on the east side, and if you've got your cell phone and you're interested in doing some great things with some print photographs, I would tell you to type the word create and text it to 5 and then 48. So 58888, text the word create and learn more about how you can get a free keychain to take back to somebody you care about. How do you create memories with the photographs that are on your phone? Our friends at Kodak Moments are doing some really cool and innovative innovative things in that space. So stop by and see everybody while you're out there today. With that, I want to talk a little more about innovation and introduce some of my colleagues that are helping us inform the industry about what's coming next and where the opportunities are. For those of you that aren't aware, Retail Tomorrow is a platform we created a few years ago with a specific purpose to connect our members to what's next. This was an idea that was shaped by Trey and Mark Ciccone and a couple of folks on our team, and the intent was, how do we inspire the industry to connect to what's next? And that could be products, services, or technologies. Fast forward 3 years, and now you'll see our Retail Tomorrow is a co-brand of GMDC, and this is a platform and a mission that's gaining traction and beginning to scale. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on it. I'm going to let my partners Trey and Mark Ciccone talk about it, but today you're going to hear some provocative things about where the industry is going, where the opportunities reside, and how you can participate. So I'm going to call up Trey Holder from Retail Tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I hope everybody's having a great conference so far. I know we've had people here the last couple days and some new attendees that have joined us today. So excited to talk a little bit about Retail Tomorrow and what we do. We started off at Retail Tomorrow doing immersions, and these immersions really focused on bringing executives into a marketplace and exposing them to what's happening in that city around retail, as well as entrepreneurs that are disrupting the space. The events are 2.5-day events. We have 3 dinners and lunches, and everybody, all these executives are together all the time. So we do store tours and workshops, and there's tons of content. We have partners like Google and Intel and Microsoft, and they talk to us about the future of retail and where it's heading. You know, our premise is not that retail is dead, it's just evolving. And our goal is to educate our constituency around what's happening in retail and how they can continue to evolve alongside of the retailers, suppliers, wholesalers, and brands that are out there today. We have an event coming up in Boston. Unfortunately, if anybody would like to attend, it's actually sold out. This is going to be our best attended event so far. We actually will have, I think over 42% of the participants will be coming from the retailer wholesaler side. Really excited about what's happening there. Would love to be able to have some extra people attend, but unfortunately we've hit our bandwidth there, which goes to what we'll be doing next year. So anybody that's interested in joining us next year, please come and talk to us as soon as you possibly can. What we're going to be doing in Atlanta is really focusing on building loyalty through experience. So we'll be working with a lot of the professional sports teams from the Braves and the Falcons and the Hawks and their CMOs and ownership about how they are able to capture loyalty. Sports are probably one of the greatest industries out there around loyalty. So we'll learn a lot about that. We'll go to the Battery, and there's going to be some great experiences there. We'll be working with Georgia Tech and Emory there as well. So really excited about what's happening there. And then in Chicago, we will be focusing on future leaders and disruptors. Chicago is spending a lot of time and money and resources on educating the high school children all the way up through college around disruption, innovation, and those types of things. So it's a perfect topic for us to discuss while we're there. I'm going to pass the mic over to my co-chair, the professor, Mark Ciccone here, and he's going to talk a little bit more detail around some of those things that we do on these immersions.
You say he's the dude, he's got the light bulb on, and they call me the legacy guy. They think they're being polite when they say that, but it is what it is. So anyhow, thanks, Trey. I'm going to take 5 or 6 minutes and just kind of give you a flavor for what a Retail Tomorrow City Immersion is all about. And the general concept is to experience innovation by seeing and touching it in a marketplace and not via a PowerPoint presentation in a conference or in Las Vegas Convention Center or something like that. I mean, those are great vehicles to talk about things, but we really are trying to do something different. And that's what our mindset's been right from the start. Every one of these events, and this is our 6th one in Boston, has the same theme, and it's innovating the shopper experience. Within that, we have sub-themes, and I'll give you an example of some of the sub-themes that we've had. Omnichannel, experiential retail, future of store design, disruptive technology, the future of self-care, retail in the smart city, influencer marketing, and executive leadership in retail. Now, where do we go and what do we see at a typical event? Well, at a typical Retail Tomorrow event, you'll be in touch with 15 or so startups at one point or another. And as an example, we had a startup that it was an early stage startup. It was one of their very first pitches they ever made at a Retail Tomorrow event. That we gave them some feedback. Some of our retailers that were there gave them some feedback. And about 18 months later, that startup was on Shark Tank and won the biggest prize ever won by a female-owned startup in the history of Shark Tank, over $1 million. On the other extreme, we had in Los Angeles, we had a startup called Liquid Death. Google it. And we thought it was the craziest idea, but it's kind of going viral just based on the name alone and the packaging. So some of these things are kind of counterintuitive, but they're quite provocative. We don't just see startups. We always get into a couple of very big players in the area of innovation. And as Trey said, Microsoft and Google and Intel are 3 of our biggest partners. And so, for example, in Seattle, we got into the Microsoft Retail Innovation Center, 50,000 square foot facility outside of Seattle with all kinds of emerging technology in it in real retail environments. We got into the Amazon Go store in Seattle, the first one, about 2 weeks after it opened. We also got into one of the 2 Starbucks roasteries on Earth that was there, and they talked to us about how they view innovation as well. So we go outside of our channels as well. In Toronto, we went to Google Sidewalk Labs, a really unbelievable concept where the city of Toronto is working with Google to recreate a part of their waterfront that is really just a wasteland right now, and they're building that part of the city from what they say is the internet on up. We also went to, here it says the Hockey Hall of Fame, that we also have some fun with these things. The Boston Bruins, unfortunately, will not have their name on the bottom of that. You can tell where I'm from. Somebody from St. Louis said yes, congratulations. We went to Los Angeles, and we did a deep dive. This is the picture on the right is in the Google facility out there, built inside the Spruce Goose hangar where Howard Hughes built that airplane. It's now an unbelievable facility, given over to many things that Google's doing, including influencer marketing, which was our theme out there. Their big YouTube studio was right across the street. We had a chance to experience all kinds of storytelling and influencer marketing. So we also, in Boston, for example, we're going to get into academia a little bit. We're going to visit MIT, and we're going to visit the lab that pioneered and invented the term Internet of Things. It started right there. And you can see there's a clear line of sight between what was going on there and is going on there and in our industry with smart shelves and automated retail. We're going to get into a place called the Age Lab, and we're going to meet Agnes. Agnes is an acronym, and let me make sure I get it right. It's a age gain now empathy system that researchers have created for store designers to wear. That kind of simulates what it's like to be an older person, somebody even older than I am, or kind of my age, and what it's like to shop and to live with kind of those physical limitations. And it's the suit that was worn by the entire CVS design team and their executives when they were thinking about what is now Health Hub, which they're now rolling out. It had a big effect on how they thought about that. So we're gonna get a look at that. As Trey said, we get into stores, and we get into the best stores we can get into, in supermarkets primarily, to get guided tours by executives as to how they're thinking and what they're trying to execute. But we also get into a lot of concept stores. We've been in a concept store that was manned by 2 robots. We are going to have a mobile store that was going to follow us around in Boston, and it's going to have a product in it that we'll sell as we go along in our various stops. Think of it kind of as a GM showcase on wheels. And it eventually will be fully automated. They're working on that now with mobile pay, a totally unmanned vehicle. There's executions of that being discussed in various cities. We're going to get a look at it in Boston. We go outside of our industry at these events to learn, to see what we can learn from other industries that have been disrupted. So, for example, we had a session with the co-founder of Tesla, and he talked about how that whole industry has been disrupted based on what they're doing, and there are clear parallels to what we're all going through in our industry. In Los Angeles, we had a session with a Hollywood scriptwriter who has written scripts for Coppola and Spielberg to talk about what storytelling is like. What can we learn about how to tell stories at retail based on his experiences? And then I want to assure you that what we always try to do at the end of all these is bring it home to our businesses. This is not innovation tourism. This is what does this mean for what we're trying to do in center store and in the categories in which we compete. So, for example, after our San Francisco event, we had an exercise with a store designer who's actually on the board of GMDC now, which we never had before, who had us go through some breakouts as target customers. You're a millennial or you're a baby boomer, and what will the center store look like in the future if we put AI in and augmented reality and store automation, et cetera. If you want to see the write-up on it, it'll blow your socks off. This was done a couple of years ago. Already, we have to update it, but we do try to really bring it home to our constituents. I guess the final thing I'll say is that what I've just outlined probably will strike you as very different from what a trade association typically does. And we've been told that this is really different and kind of unique. And I've thought about this, and I've been involved with GMDC for almost 15 years. And although it looks and feels different, it's really part of GMDC's mainstream mission, which is to connect all of you to growth opportunities. This is just a different way to do it, and we think it's right for our time. And part of all these events is networking, and we have some fun with it. And so, as Trey said, these sell out pretty quickly these days, so I hope you can join us in Atlanta and in Chicago next year. So I'm going to turn it back to you, Trey, bro, dude, and I know you've got some final thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Mark. So the other thing I want to talk about is some of the other initiatives that we do through Retail Tomorrow. So, I guess they moved the slide too quick there. But anyway, some of the other initiatives that we work on through Retail Tomorrow is we have a podcast that's moderated by Kevin Coop from Morning Newsbeat. So if you get an opportunity to download that, it's on iTunes and Google Play, and it can also be found on the Retail Tomorrow website. So there's some tremendous content that's on there. Kevin goes to a lot of trade shows, has some great disruptors that participate, and he's a fantastic moderator. So some great content to get there as well. And then we also have started what we call our headquarter immersions. And what we do with these headquarter immersions is we work with suppliers, wholesalers or distributors, retailers or brands. We actually bring the innovation to your headquarters so you can expose more people than you can at these actual immersions. It also gives you the opportunity to ask questions that you may not want to ask in front of a larger group, so you don't necessarily want to telegraph what it is that you're doing. These events are one-day events. We start those days off with some content. That content could come from Deloitte, A.T. Kearney, Nielsen, anybody that would be willing to come in and provide some content, and that kind of sets the stage. And then we have startups come in and growth stage companies that are technology platforms that talk to you about what they're doing and what their solutions, how their solutions could work for your organization. We can customize those. We're doing one with a retailer that's interested in front end. We're doing one that's interested in just e-commerce. We can certainly do different buckets. We did one last year where we had 3 different buckets. One bucket was operational technologies, one was data insights, blockchain, and the final was consumer engagements. And then there's a little bit of networking afterwards where you have an opportunity to meet and have discussions with those companies. We had about 90-day lead time on these. We try to do about one a month. And if you're interested, please let me know. There is no cost today to the host. We only ask that the host has decision makers in the room that would be interested in the technologies that we bring, and we work to customize those. Our big partner on that, we'll actually hear from Sterling Hawkins here, who's about to speak about creating the future of commerce. Sterling is a fantastic speaker, travels around the world. He's kind of our rock star influencer partner. And, he is part of the Center for Advancing Retail Technology, so they have access to thousands and thousands of technology companies. They vet, I believe, 1,500 or so a year, and they work with us to help curate this content customized for your goals. So really excited about all the things that we're doing, all the initiatives that we have moving forward. We hope to be able to do some more with some of you and hope at some headquarter events, and hope everyone in this room at some point will join us on these immersions. I know a lot of people have. We do have some fantastic sponsors I'd like to thank who've been with us for a long time. Energizer, Unilever, Bradshaw, Navajo, Microsoft, Intel. I'm sure I'm forgetting some, but they've been with us the entire step of the way, and we really appreciate and want to say thank you to the commitment from everybody there. Sterling, I'll hand the mic over to you.
Hi. Oh, come on, you guys. I know it's the middle of lunch, but hi. Okay, much better. Thank you. There's some clapping. I like it. So it's great to be with you. And first off, I just want to thank GMDC and especially the entire events team that put these things together. It's just a phenomenal couple of days here. Can we give them a round of applause? I also want to acknowledge all of you, because I realize it takes something to step out of the office, write your emails on smaller screens for a couple of days, to be in a conversation about innovation, a conversation about what's possible. So let's give everybody here a round of applause. Gotta climb back up on this thing. So I've got what's got to be one of the best jobs in the world. As Trey mentioned, I get to travel around, spend time with really incredible people, some of the greatest minds of our day, and play with some really cool technology. There's not a leading retailer brand out there that I haven't talked to about, well, what's going on with innovation? How's it going to transform our business? Because we live in a world today where drones are delivering products, purchases happen in VR. We're talking to bots. You know, how many of you guys have Siri, Alexa, one of those bots? Yeah, most everybody. It's like a normal thing now. We just talk to robots. It wasn't always that way. Part of the reason I love what I do is that it brings me back to my roots, back to people. I'm technically a 5th generation retailer. I grew up in my family's store, which started back in 1934 as this roadside produce stand. And when I was a kid, or think back to when you were a kid, or even longer ago to when my great-great-grandmother started this thing, retail was different, wasn't it? I mean, we knew our customers, like their names. Personally, we knew their families. We knew their likes, their dislikes, what they might like. We could extend credit on a wave. Hey, we'll see you next week. And actually know we were going to see them next week. I even remember, this is when I was real young, for good customers that couldn't make it in on certain days, we would gather up all the groceries that they needed, put them in the back of the station wagon, which I assure you was the cool car at the time, and drop them off at their house on our way home. And that was before delivery was a thing, because it's a thing now, right? Somewhere along the way, we as a store, arguably we as an industry, lost track of that individual customer. It became more about mass, more about volume. And loyalty, customer data, data in general, helped a lot. It was my family's store that launched one of the first loyalty programs in retail back in the early 90s. And through that, we started looking at all sorts of technologies, over 1,000 new technologies every year now. And it's also what got me into speaking, which is literally my favorite thing in the world to do. We got some time here. I got to tell you a quick story. So this is like 15 years ago. I'm speaking for Mitsubishi in Tokyo, Japan. In their largest conference space, there's like 500 Japanese men. They were all men. All in what looked like the same gray suit and white shirt and red tie, and they're all smoking. There's so much smoke in the room, you can't even see the back of it. It just kind of fades out like into a foggy day. And I was nervous. This is one of my first big presentations. I knew exactly what I was going to say, so I get up there and I get my first couple of lines. And the translator starts right on cue. 30 seconds go by. 60 seconds. 90 seconds go by, which is an eternity when you don't know what's going on up here. 2 minutes later, the entire audience breaks out laughing. I didn't tell a joke. So I stumble through the rest of this thing. I get to the end, and I find the translator afterwards, and I say to him, Mr. Numata, that was his name, Mr. Numata, what did you say out there? Why was everybody laughing? He said, don't worry about it. I told me we were here talking about retail and the future of commerce, but you were really here to find a Japanese wife. It's a true story. Really, that was my first big speaking thing. Now, I learned two very important things that day. The first, well, if you're looking for a date in Japan, this is clearly the guy to go to. The second is foundational to everything that we've done since, which is, if you're going to have the desired impact on your customer, well, you had better be speaking their language. And today, that's more important than ever before in history. You see, it used to be us as the industry that held the power within the supply chain. Back in, I think it was 1940s, we had this incredible innovation, self-service retail. People could go in and get the products off the shelves themselves. And it worked. And we've come up with a bunch of improvements on that since then. This is not everything, but mid-70s scanning, early 90s self-checkout, mid-90s loyalty we talked a little bit about. The point of this, and everything else that I've forgotten there, that these are innovations that we as an industry, we as the business chose to embrace or not embrace. And we don't live in a world like that anymore. It was somewhere with the iPhone or around the iPhone where consumers started taking the perspective of, hey, I'm on mobile. And if you want to do business with me, you've got to be on mobile too. And it's what will be things like, I'm in virtual reality. I have an Internet of Things connected home. And if you want to do business with me, well, you've got to be on those platforms as well. The language consumers are speaking is clearly digital, right? You guys know these numbers. More than half the world's online. We've got Elon Musk sending up a bunch of satellites into space to get more of us online faster. Most of us are online via mobile phone. And almost half of the people that have ever been on the internet have purchased something on the internet. And you would think that with these kinds of technologies, especially in this country, well, retail must be pretty great, right? I'm a LA guy, and well, I'm from New York originally, but since I moved to Los Angeles, all my East Coast friends make fun of me, saying I've gone full West Coast. And I bought into the whole thing. I'm into, the juicing and the yoga and the beaches, the whole thing, right? But kind of like yoga aligns mind, body, spirit, I look at our industry and say, hey, there's an incredible opportunity here to bring together our customers, technology, and our businesses to create a really phenomenally great user experience. But this is what it looks like today, by and large, right? Retail hasn't changed really fundamentally in the better part of 100 years. And that just doesn't work anymore. Here's the proof. 2017, 2018, more stores have closed than ever before in history. And it's easy to think, oh, it's the four walls of the store that's the problem. Especially when you've got companies like Amazon, even before they bought Whole Foods, that said, oh yeah, we're all about e-commerce, and they're responsible for something like 53% of all e-commerce growth, some massive number like that. So it's easy to get down on the stores, but it's not the stores. It's how they're coming together with technology to create these human experiences. Here's the proof. During that same time period, more stores have opened than ever before in history. So how is that? How come some stores are blowing the doors off and others struggling to keep them open? Well, it has to do with our business cultures, and it has to do with our thinking. As humans, we tend to look back into the past. We orient ourselves into the past, and we look for, well, what can we fix, adjust, or change that we've already done? And we've got to do that. I'm not saying don't do that. But if that's all we're doing, literally the best we're going to end up with is a slightly better version of something that we already have. And so as an industry, we put up numbers like this. 19% of us has some kind of mobile point of sale. 26% look at data and analytics as a big growth area for them. And most of it's because, well, we're spending 80% of our budgets on technologies that we already have. I believe that it's really our job. Part of our responsibility as retailers and brands is to transform retail into that low friction, easily accessible, highly personalized, customer-centric world that I know we all know is possible. So luckily, there's something else. Has anybody here ever heard the story about the invention of chess? Other than Trey and some of the GMDC team? Couple people? Okay, so you can keep me honest. The story goes, back in ancient China, the emperor was bored. And he did what bored emperors did back then. He called in a local game merchant, and he said to the game merchant, come up with a game for me that I'll never get bored of. Not able to refuse the emperor, he agrees, he goes away, and I don't know if it was days, weeks, months, however long goes by, but he invents the game chess. And he runs back to the emperor, and he shows him the game, and the emperor says, this is the greatest game. How can I ever repay you? Now the game merchant is smart. Remember, he invented chess, so he thinks for a moment. And he says, well, you'll pay me in rice, because that's how they were paying people back then. And we'll take the chessboard. And on the first square of the chessboard, we'll put 1 grain of rice. And for every square thereafter, we'll double it. And the emperor immediately agrees. He says, it's a great deal. How much rice can that be? So they shake hands. They draw up the paperwork. They high five, however they finalized deals back then. And they go about adding up the rice. The first half of the chessboard, relatively uneventful, adds up to like a large field of rice. It's the second half of the chessboard where things get interesting. Square after square, it's adding up, and by the last square, it adds up to over 18 million trillion grains of rice, which, at 10 grains of rice per square inch, it's enough rice to cover the entire surface of the Earth, including the oceans, twice. Now, I told you that story to tell you this, which is the greatest shortcoming of the human race is our inability to understand the exponential function, how that rice adds up. We all know the stories. We know the mathematical formulas. We can even talk about it, but when it comes to how it's going to impact our businesses, not to mention our lives, it's a totally different story. And all emerging technologies are on this exponential growth curve. If you just take computer processing, around now, a $1,000 computer processor will buy you the processing power equivalent of about a mouse brain. It's not bad for $1,000, right? They're on our cell phones. By 2045, which is not all that long from now, that same $1,000 processor buys you the processing power of all human beings alive. It'll be about 9 billion people. And now we all know that, but again, how that's going to manifest in our lives and our businesses, totally different story. So let's look at, well, what are some of the things that are going to be part of the future of commerce that are happening today? And one of them are these bots that we're talking to, right? Whether it's Google, Amazon, something that's homegrown. It starts to be a new way for us as consumers to interact with the retailers and brands that we buy from. And it's not just on the front end. There's a company out of Texas that's working on this conversational commerce for customer service. And they found when they plugged it in to one of the largest airlines and one of the largest insurance companies in the world, that it could handle 80% of customer service inquiries. 80%. Now, I'm not a mathematician, but you look at something like that and you say, hey, if for the cost of about one employee, all of a sudden we have a technology that can handle 80% of inquiries, well, that frees up some people, some time, some capital to figure out, well, why are so many people calling customer service to begin with, you know? And after we talk to these things, well, we have to get the product. And it's no secret, everybody's talking about delivery these days, especially automated delivery. I mean, we've had bots for years throughout the supply chain, but only now are we starting to see them on our sidewalks, on our streets. Has anybody seen an autonomous vehicle delivering around their location? Nobody? That surprises me. They're in London, they're in DC, they're in the Bay Area, where literally stores are working with automated delivery tools that, when used, save up to 90% of the delivery costs. 90%! You know, when you look at numbers like this, 80% of customer service inquiries, 90% of delivery costs, it totally transforms, well, what our stores might look like. But it also goes into the home. What's like the worst thing that happens at home? Anybody have any ideas? What? Guests. yeah, I guess if you don't like hosting parties, guests could be the worst. For me, it's when you run out of toilet paper. That's the worst thing, right? Especially, you don't have any more rolls there. Well, what do? Well, now, through the Internet of Things, we live in a world where you can press a button and it shows up literally on your doorstep that afternoon. Amazon's got their Dash button, which before they stopped selling the buttons, they still support the programs, don't sell more buttons, they were getting 4 orders a minute. And they didn't stop it because it wasn't working, but they're starting to integrate it into our homes, into our washing machines, into our refrigerators, into our water filters, right? SodaStream worked with a company called Quick, which is essentially an Amazon dash button. And what they found is that as they plugged it into the SodaStream, 20% increase in sales overnight. It's not bad. You might take that, right? The thing to notice here, though, is that as we're ordering like this, as ordering becomes automated, all of a sudden, it removes entire product categories from the traditional retail market. And this is one of my favorites. As we leave stores, we might not even have to wait in line anymore. How many of you have been to an Amazon Go store? Yeah. I was just at one 6 months ago. And I'm in the industry, so I read about it, I knew what to expect. But literally, I walked into this place, grabbed a couple of things, and as I'm leaving, it felt like I was stealing. Like, really? I'm like, this feels wrong. And just like, when we implemented credit cards, people spent more because it didn't feel like spending money? What do you think when this happens? Right? All of a sudden, you're grabbing stuff because it doesn't feel like you're buying things anymore. And at the same time, there's a whole bunch of Amazon Go-like competitors where you can bring these kinds of technologies in your stores. There's probably 24 of them. And they can do things like save 30 to 55% increase in profit margins. So really, when we look at all of this, it's really about making things that are perceptive, understanding what the customer wants, maybe even before the customer knows they want it. Being predictive and being present, being where the customer is when they need it. If you look at kind of the linear trajectory that most of us are on, right? We're going to open 10% more stores. We're going to save dollars within the supply chain. And we overlay the exponential growth that's possible. Well, there's a gap. And it's called the innovation gap. And that gap is our opportunity. The question is, well, how do you step into that gap? Any ideas? Crickets? Not one person? No. You're just full from lunch, huh? Yeah. All right. You got lucky this time because part of it is listening. Listening for something new as possible, hearing new ideas, and taking new actions. And CARTs come together with GMDC to design a platform to do exactly that. To give you and your companies exposure to new ideas, new thinking, new technologies, most of which, speaking of somebody that's in the industry again, blow my mind. And combine it with the tools, the support, the relationships to realize what those technologies can do to your business, whether you're piloting them or rolling them out. I look at this as it's a movement of stepping into what the future of commerce looks like, stepping into that innovation gap. And I'd invite all of you today, no matter where you sit, how innovative or not innovative your company is, join us in stepping in to that innovation gap. Step into some of these new technologies and step into create what the future of that customer experience can actually be. So I'll be here for the remainder of the day. Trey, Mark, the rest of the team, anybody from GMDC you can find. But just have a chat with us. Look at what's possible. And then we can all take some actions from there. Thank you very much, guys. It's been a lot of fun being with you.